In a world where Garmin navigates planes and boats around the globe, you would think that no one would be able to touch them in the cycling space, but somehow a challenger emerged. It almost makes no sense. This isn't a company that was built in Silicon Valley, but from the obsession of endurance athletes to create products for endurance athletes. Wahoo has become one of the most respected names in indoor training and connected fitness. Today I'm sitting down with Gareth Joyce, the CEO of Wahoo. He's led giants like Mercedes, Delta, Proterra, and now he's steering one of the most innovative brands in sports tech. We talk about everything on this. What he learned from legacy businesses like aviation and automotive, and how Wahoo plans to grow in a world dominated by Apple and Garmin, and where the future of indoor training, data, and AI is really headed. If you care about performance, innovation, or the future of cycling tech, this one's for you. It's Gareth Joyce. Gareth, welcome to the Roadman podcast.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to be on it with you.
This is the intersection, like I was saying offline, of two of my major passions in life, like business and cycling. So I'm like a proper fanboy, ready to like scoop inside your brain here and figure out how all this works. To kick it off, the thing I'm most intrigued about Wahoo, and you'll maybe have good perspective on this because you've come from Mercedes, Delta, Proterra, and now you're into Wahoo. So you got to experience Wahoo like I experienced Wahoo from the outside before becoming an insider. Like, how does Wahoo exist in a world where Garmin navigates planes through the sky and ships through the sea? How have Wahoo carved out this space that we still rely on it?
That's a great question, and it probably goes straight to the genesis of Wahoo. Really, this is a company that's founded and built on products that are designed and developed by athletes for athletes. And that's our single greatest strength. We truly understand the psyche and mindset of an athlete. And I know that, as you said, as a customer who uses the product before I joined the organization, there's a certain intuition behind the product, an instinct, an affinity for the product and the application of the product for cyclists, runners, that just makes it much easier to use our products. It takes the pain and suffering out of devices that are developed by people that are not necessarily as connected to the athlete as we are. I think that really is what's at the core of everything we do, and that's how we became the sort of David to the Goliath, if you like.
Yeah, and if there's an interesting observational take on this as well. If you look and you're looking to start a company now, the strength of a company like Garmin, it's the bulk they have, it's the thousands of employees, but it's also their weakness, because you can pick off a small corner of that business like cycling navigation and do it better, faster, more nimble than they're ever going to be able to do it by being an underdog.
That's exactly right. You summed it up. That's really the way we go at it, and we try not to stray from that.
When you came in from the legacy worlds, you're coming in from Mercedes, Delta, what are you bringing with you from those industries that the cycling tech world specifically is missing?
Two things. One, passion. Fortunately, I've now had the benefit of doing two things in my career that I'm exceptionally passionate about. One is automotive industry. I love cars. I always have since I was 3 or 4 years old. And I spent many years working in that environment. And every day I went to work, I loved everything I did. This is the same for me. I've been a cyclist since I was 10 years old. Bought my first bike, saving money that I asked my friends to give me for my birthday party. I was very strategic about it, and I got a bunch of gift cards and cash, and that afternoon went off to the store and bought myself my first bike. And ever since then, I've loved the sport of cycling. I just get tremendous joy out of it, and so now I get to enjoy the benefit of that as a job. So passion is one big thing. And then the second is, obviously, through my career, I have developed some just life skill combined with my academic sort of background, and in running big businesses and startup businesses. I've got a pretty good cross section of small to large. I run teams that are 40,000 plus people large on a global scale in almost every country in the world, and I've run teams that are less than 100 people. And so you learn different things when you do that. And I've got this kind of cross section of leadership experience that I bring to the business that I think it just helps a company that is the David to the Goliath kind of fighter in this market to help us continue to grow as we have become a legitimate competitor in the space.
Do you see the transition for companies likely happening both ways? Like, you've come from the legacy business world into the cycling space. Do you think we'll see more cycling CEOs transitioning into the legacy space? Do you think how cross-transferable are those skills in both directions?
Gosh, that's a good question. I would probably say no, honestly, for two reasons. One, I think it's a fun industry to be in, so I'm not sure too many people would want to make that transition. But secondly, it's less likely to provide you with those. It's not if you're a specialist in the space, it may not be something that you want to translate into other environments. I'm a little unique in that I made the decision when I left Mercedes to do something completely different. It was a big risk. It's kind of like, you've made a life-changing transformation when you went from a legal practitioner who was an innovator into something that is now a completely different.
Don't mention it to my parents.
Yeah, but I mean, you're happy. And so I made the decision to make a complete change, and I went from the automotive industry into the airline industry. For the first 2-3 months, I thought I was an absolute idiot. And I wondered, there were days where I thought, I just don't know if I'm ever going to learn this industry. It was the best thing I ever did, because the learning curve that I went through was one of the steepest I've ever had, because I literally had to learn something completely new. I wasn't adding tools to my toolbox. I was building a whole new toolbox. And that gave me the confidence and honestly, the enjoyment that learning something new is something I can continue to do through my career. And then that gave me the confidence when I left the airline industry to go into a battery electric startup. Again, a whole new adventure. And I experienced the same level of learning and the same level of kind of reward. And now I've kind of gone into this industry and I'm experiencing the same thing. So I think it's something I would encourage people to do, because you truly do stretch and grow, but it does take a unique personality to do it, because it's not easy. It's uncomfortable and painful in the beginning.
Do you see a difference in how cycling, I guess we have one track, which is, to use a cliche, it's the well-trodden one of the pro cyclist, becomes ex-pro cyclist, moves into industry, graduates up a company, and there's great people like Ian Boswell there, great people who have come this track. So it's not to diminish it or downplay it. They've made serious contributions to moving our sport forward. Do you see a difference in how that use case or person A views the cycling industry versus how you view the cycling industry in terms of opportunity and threats to it?
I think the personality you described, if you take someone like an Ian Boswell versus me, we've landed in the same company having traveled two very different paths. To me, that is the true kind of essence of what diversity means. I think we use the word diversity as just way too much of a cliche in the modern business place. But as somebody that's traveled around the world with my career, I come from South Africa, I've worked in Europe, I've worked in the US, Canada, back to the US, and I've worked in global markets running the businesses that I have. I really have learned what it means to embrace diversity. I left South Africa, I went to Europe, I lived in Amsterdam, worked in the Netherlands. I naively entered that market with the belief that, look, I just take the tools that I have, put them in that market, everything's going to be fine. I couldn't have been more wrong. I could not have been more wrong. For the first 6 months that I worked there, I found this deep sense of frustration that I could not move as quickly as I had in my career in South Africa. I don't mean me personally, I mean in terms of driving change and implementing actions. And I realized after a certain amount of time, it was because I hadn't taken the time to understand culture and language. And so I then invested in learning the language. I spent more time truly understanding the culture. And once I did that, I could communicate with the people on my team and the dealer network that we worked with in a very different way. And then I started to make progress. And that was it was an aha moment for me, which opened my eyes to the idea of, like, you have to see the world from multiple perspectives, and you have to embrace different people's inputs and perspectives if you really want to make progress in a global community. And so when you do that, then suddenly it changes the way you do business. So coming back to the point about Ian and myself, we've traveled two different pathways and landed in the same company. And I deeply value Ian's input when I talk to him about stuff, because he knows things that I could never know. I have never raced in a pro peloton. I never will. So I will never be able to truly say, I don't think so. I cannot put myself in those shoes. It's just something I can't do. So he's a guy who can. And so if you really open your mind to that diversity and go, all right, Ian, like, when it comes to that input, you are the master voice here, not me. And I need to listen. And if you do that for the 200 employees we have, then you really are embracing diverse thinking. And I think that's when you make companies and communities great, because you just are you're richer for the experience. But you have to be open to that.
How do you think about the market size in cycling? Because I spent a lot of time thinking about this when we were launching the podcast. I stepped back, and if I was going to come into the podcast space, I didn't want to come in and have the 70th most popular cycling podcast. So the problem we're solving for is, well, how do you become the biggest player in a space that's already quite saturated? So I looked for examples of companies in the cycling space that were attracting a totally new demographic. And the company I landed on really deconstructing was Peloton. As someone that's come through, my dad working on bikes after hours since I was a kid, a cycling purist, it wasn't a company I loved because it wasn't a company in my world. But through this analysis, what I began to understand is when I looked at my friends' consumption habits around new bikes, one of them would ride a Specialized this year. They'd ride a Giant the next year. So like Specialized lose a customer for a Giant to gain a customer. It's like zero-sum game. Peloton played a totally different game. And I realized this when my aunt called me, who like smokes like 50 cigarettes a day, probably, heavy drinker, and says, hey, I got a Peloton. Then I got to observe her behavior over a period of months where it's like, oh, hey, what's the story with those padded shorts? Oh, how do you use those pedals to clip in? Everyone's talking about eating on the bike. Do I need to eat on the bike? Oh, I got these gels. What time's your group ride meet on a Saturday? What sort of kit do you wear when you're going on a group ride? What do you use for navigation? What's training peaks? Like all the way up to like what's W prime now? And it's like we're getting into it. And it's like this is a totally new customer that's onboarded into our world. So we set out to create the audio version of that. How do we find someone and meet them where they are? And we had this moment quite starkly when Sarah, my fiance, who came on the podcast as a co-host accidentally one day. And I'd had George Hincapie on the podcast that week. And I'd had a George Hincapie poster on my wall when I was a kid. I was like fanboying out here for George Hincapie. And we looked at the downloads like a month later and I was like, whoa, the episode with Sarah has got more downloads than the episode with George Hincapie. And she was talking about like, I don't understand. Why can't I turn my bike upside down when I puncture? It's stupid. It makes no sense. And I was like, just don't do it. Don't turn your bike upside down when you puncture. You just don't do it that way. And we figured out after, I guess this is getting shared because this is what people are connecting with. So it's getting shared into WhatsApp groups. It's getting shared into cycling clubs. We tried it again. Sarah comes on again. Another stupid, like, oh, do I wear underwear under my cycling shorts? It outstrips the Tyler Hamilton episode. And I'm like, whoa, what's going on? And that's when we set out to kind of create this, we call it the yellow brick road, of where do we meet somebody where they are, which is outside of our cycling world, and onboard them to the point where they can listen to a 2-hour conversation with me and you, or me and Dan Bingham talking about frontal area. I worry when I look at the cycling space that we're just eating each other's dinner. That for Garmin to gain a customer, Wahoo lose a customer, and vice versa. How do you look at that competitive landscape?
So that's a great question, and it was one of the first things we started working on was, what's the growth strategy look like for our business? First, I'll mention that, as you probably know, we launched our Kick a Run product roughly a year ago. which has seen us sort of take the disruptive technology mindset we have into the running space as well. And the reason for that is our mission is you're building the better athlete in all of us. And the one thing that I recognized is the athlete market that we had historically sort of been thinking about when we build our products was the sort of apex athlete, the high-performing cyclist, high-performing triathlete, high-performing runner, and that's a wonderful place to target products because that's where they get battle tested. That's where you really learn whether your products truly do add value for people who use them every single day in a very high-performance environment. That's wonderful. So they have credibility. But we were playing in a market that's probably the 40 million athletes across the globe that are really hardcore, dedicated athletes that are training 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 times a week and doing a lot of mileage, very sophisticated athletes. I don't consider myself one of those, but I was one of the customers that found tremendous value in using a Wahoo kicker, for example. And the reason I found it valuable is it offered me a tremendous fitness opportunity, but with an experience that resonated with me because it felt as close to real-world cycling as I could get, which is a sport I love doing. There is no reason why athletes and aspirant athletes beyond the 40 million sort of apex athletes shouldn't enjoy that benefit. And when you think about a consumer base that has an interest just to become athletically healthy and engage in some sort of sporting endeavor that adds richness to their life, that market is more like 400 to 600 million people. And that's where I tip my hat to Peloton, because Peloton recognized that. They realized that when they started, an indoor bike trainer is a great way to build cardiovascular fitness and strength if you train right and be entertained at the same time. And so I think we have a product that absolutely achieves that. And you don't have to be a diehard cyclist or runner. There are people out there that just want the fitness benefit. And there's also, if you think about football players and soccer players, any kind of an athlete that requires some level of endurance training as part of their training discipline, our products are incredibly good to unlock that value. So we've changed the way we think about the market and who our target audience is. And in doing that, we're not playing the one-for-one game that you're describing. I am looking to bring more people into the space so that we can grow the sport as a whole, because I believe that, what's the expression? The rising tide lifts all boats.
There's something strange happening in endurance sports and cycling right now. Nobody's talking about NOMIO, but everybody seems to be using it. They've no influencer campaigns, they've no glossy ads. They just have the quiet word of mouth between riders who've seen what it does firsthand. I spotted this on Mads Pedersen's Instagram account, one of those little bots, and I got curious. So I did two things. Firstly, I booked a podcast with Dr. Philip Larson. He's the scientist behind it. And secondly, I ran my own little bro science experiment. Here's what I done. 4 days, I went out to the exact same hill and I rode the first 3 minutes of it. Pretty much the same legs. Day 1, I went 463 watts. Day 2, 462 watts. No NOMIO, 1 watt difference between those two efforts. Then I added NOMIO on day 3, 470 watts. Next day, 472 watts. Now this is bro science, this isn't peer reviewed, but honestly, it's real, and it got my attention. And when I sat down with Dr. Larson, one of the top physiologists in endurance sports, he explained why this might be happening to me. NOMIO's broccoli sprout extract, it triggers something called NRF2, a pathway that helps your body adapt to stress, recover faster, and buffer lactate. The result? Cyclists in a study showed lower lactate, higher power, and faster recovery without changing their training. This isn't hype. This is the next chapter of endurance science. And if you want to try it for yourself, the good folks at NOMIO have given our Roadman listeners a discount to check it out for the first time and just see if it works. So Roadman listeners can get 20% off with the code RoadmanCycling20 at nomio.com. Let's use code RoadmanCycling20 at nomio.com. Yeah. And then in terms of segmenting that potential target market, so you have your call it the apex of your 40 million. I would suggest, and maybe I'm incorrect, that the two other use cases, the football player or the real novice cyclist, are two different customer avatars, because one has a potential to travel up a value ladder, whereas the soccer player probably doesn't. He's probably sticking with, hey, I'm using the bike for just cycling, cross training.
Correct.
I could come
I
into
would agree 100%. They're different customers. I think then, to your point, you could take that 400 to 600 million and segment it further, which we've done. And then the use case is different for different people. So to your point, if we take somebody who's training for soccer, it's a complementary training media that gives them a tool that's far more engaging and perhaps helps them just get the exercise done, versus someone who's a new entrant into the sport of cycling and will potentially grow into an outdoor cyclist who buys a bike, buys cycling shoes, buys power pedals, buys a bike computer, starts to consume gels, as you described, buys a helmet, now you're bringing in a customer into an entire system, an ecosystem that creates monetary value across the entire cycling portfolio.
So as you're capturing a customer and they're going from a casual customer to becoming a Wahoo hooligan, what's the decision-making matrix you use to assess whether a new product idea should actually come to market? Like, I actually got in the post yesterday. It was good timing. I'm starting to do a bit more time trial. Got my new Aero pedals. Haven't even cracked them out of the box yet. But, when something like that comes into full production, how have you stress tested it before to make sure this is in fact the correct next product in the Wahoo line?
I'll give two parts to that answer. One is you asked me earlier about bringing my experience to a company like Wahoo. Where's the value in that? Focus, as I've learned over many years in industry, is either a great strength or a great weakness if you have a lack of focus. And so when you're an innovation-driven company, typically the ideas outstrip the capacity to execute. And so for a business that's in the current state that we're in, one of our most challenging tasks is to stay focused, because we have more ideas than we can execute on.
Yeah.
And so, coming to the second part of the answer to get to your question specifically, which one of those ideas should find its way into development, production, and the market, versus what should die on the vine and just get put on the parking lot list, is one of our most challenging tasks.
Yeah, I would have thought so.
So we rely heavily on a couple of things. One, our mission, which is building the better athlete. We try and stay really true to that. Say, like, is this something that will truly help an athlete become a better athlete? And better is a relative term, right? So you could be somebody who's starting from the couch and never done anything. Then better is get onto a trainer, start to experience this world, which is really cool, really beneficial, helps you become somebody who's living a healthier lifestyle. Or it's somebody who's performing in the top 10 as an amateur cyclist who participates in local crit races, for example, and you want to become a winner. We have the tools to do that too. It's that spectrum of how do you become a better athlete that helps us answer that question. And to answer that, you've got to rely on athletes, right? So what does an athlete use? And we have two major advantages. One, our company is full of athletes. The people who work here tend to gravitate towards our mission. And so everything we design, develop, and test is tested by people who actually use the product. It's the old saying, we eat our own dog food. And then we have a really good group of ambassadors out there. I mean, you mentioned some of them, just as we were getting going. Lachlan, as an example, Ian Boswell, who works for us, and many other pro athletes that we work with, that help us validate and test whether the product really is credible and does provide that value to a consumer, so that when you take it to that whole spectrum of customers, we can actually legitimately say, like, this is a real credible product that's going to help you become a better athlete.
Yeah.
And hopefully in doing that, it also gives you a better experience. That's one of our primary objectives, is like, just make sure it's a good experience.
When do you think it's time to call time on the GPS units? And by that I mean, remember you got your iPhone at the start and you were like, oh my God, this is magic. Like, there's a calculator on this. You can, and then the next one came out and it's like, you can take photos with this. The next one came out, it's like photos, music, I can do my email. At some point, I don't know when, like I'm on iPhone 15, 16, I don't know. At some point, they just became indistinguishable. They all do basically the exact same thing, unless you're the 1% of customers. My sister's boyfriend is always banging on to me about the new screen and the better resolution. I'm just like, I'm lost. Like, unless it does something totally new, I'm just not going to buy another phone until this stops charging. I feel like I'm almost there with head units. It's like, if you use the Wahoo Ace, it's amazing. If you use the Hammerhead Karoo, it's amazing. If you use the Garmin 1050, it's amazing. I don't know where it goes in the next step that makes me not use my, generation now computer to get the next generation computer.
Yeah, I think there are two dimensions to that. One is, what's the kind of forward-looking innovation that comes, but there's also a technology legacy issue that we can't forget. If you think about your iPhone that you just used as an example, if you're on a 15 now, you're not on an iPhone 8. And there's a reason for that, because your iPhone 8 just doesn't work anymore.
Yeah.
Because the continuous upgrades that come consume more memory, consume more bandwidth, need better resolution on the screens. And so as these incremental developments are being made that bring new technology that I think will continue to happen, that innovation curve will continue, there's a legacy debt that eventually becomes relevant, where you just can't do it anymore with the computers. I mean, we just recently had an issue you might be aware of with our Generation 1 bike computers. The chip that we use in it is a chip that has been around for more than 20 years. And eventually it runs out of the capacity to process what needs to be processed, and you've got to deal with that. Now, fortunately, we were able to find a software solution to that, but eventually it will run out of bandwidth. And so you do have to arrest that debt and just say, at some point you stop development and you cannot support it any longer. That's a sort of a push pressure, if you like, to continue to innovate forward. But then, of course, on the consumer side, there are always new innovations that you can continue to think about. And if you mentioned the Ace, we put a wind sensor into that as the first bike computer with an integrated wind sensor. We haven't really unlocked or leveraged the value of that yet, because we know there's a lot of innovation we can do with it, but we needed to get the hardware developed, get it out, get it in consumers' hands. And we now have some really good ideas how we can continue to innovate around features that would come out for that. So I think the development curve will continue to happen, and that generally means that you've got to develop the hardware to support the continuous needs of the software demands.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I like that answer as well. The indoor training space has changed like unrecognizably since, when you were a kid riding, and, I was out in the garage. You'd read the back of a paint can to pass the time, and remember it like ripped through your back tire, and it feel like you're pedaling in sand. It's
I have a couple of years on
now.
you, but I remember my introduction to indoor training was on good old-fashioned analog rollers, and I will tell you that was and that was before helmets were a thing with cycling too. And so I remember using my rollers. I literally had to do it in the hallway of my house in the passage, because it was the only safe way to do it. Because if you just lose your concentration for a nanosecond, it was a fairly catastrophic event.
Yeah, I had one of those kind of.
We have advanced somewhat.
The first that I can remember of the new modern take your wheel off back trainers was Le Mans. Do you remember the Le Mans trainer?
Yes, I do.
Was that the first of that whole market segment?
It could be, I must say, at that time, I was not that close to the developments in the market. It must have been thereabouts.
It was good, but it was loud. Like you were getting evicted from your apartment if you used that past 7 p.m. But
Yeah,
it,
you've been shut down in Switzerland.
so it's gone like to the point where today it was raining out and I'm like, I've 3 hours to do. 3 hours would have been at that tipping point where most people think, there's no way I'm riding 3 hours indoors. Now there's Wift bike sitting behind with the Wahoo trainer on it, and it's like, it's a pretty nice experience to ride 2.5, 3, 4 hours on an indoor bike now. Do you think there's more innovation to come in terms of the indoor ecosystem, not specifically just the bike, but you guys, you have the fans, you have the Wahoo Climb. Is there more in this ecosystem that you think can bring outside to inside?
Uh, I think the hardware ecosystem is maturing, and I'd say the innovation curve is probably, it's hitting that part of the curve where it starts to flatten out. To your
Yeah.
point, we've got elevation change on the bikes, we've got wind, we've got obviously infinitely configurable setup capabilities, and now we're sort of in that phase of integration where hardware and software speak to each other in a way that offers consumers a wide range of choice. So I think we start to see more innovation in the experience than we do necessarily in the hardware itself. And I think that's good, because ultimately, if we want to bring more people into the sport, one of the barriers you have to overcome is ease of use. And the more we can innovate around that, the more we will bring people in. And so, for me, the vision now is, how do you create the lowest resistance engagement in the product? To your point, I think if you consider the experience we've created today, whether you're using our own training products or whether you're using it with a product like Zwift or Ruvi or any one of the great products that are out there, it's a really good experience, to the extent that 5 years ago even, to me, the indoor workout was I can't work out outdoors, so I have to do it indoors.
Yeah.
Now the experience is that good that I find myself on certain occasions choosing indoor over outdoor, because I just feel like that.
Yeah, and depending on the session as well. Like, you have a lot of
Exactly,
intervals,
depending on the
cadence
session.
changes.
Absolutely right. So yeah, if I'm doing a structured workout, hands down I'd rather do it indoors now, because it's a much easier and better experience. So I think we've moved the industry to a point where once you're engaged in the product, the experience is really good. What we need to work at now is how to make it easier for people to engage, especially if you're looking to bring new people into the product, because there is still a little bit of friction when it comes to setup, configuration, and I would say becoming technically literate on the product.
There's an exclusionary vocabulary we use,
Correct,
which makes total sense to us. But when you talk, you just realize how ridiculous it is when you go to explain something like even the Tour de France. I use this example all the time because I tried to explain the Tour de France to a friend who wasn't into cycling at all, and try do it. It's like, oh, it's a 3-week race. Well, who wins? Oh, the guy who's the lowest cumulative time wins. Okay, why is this guy celebrating today? Oh no, because there's a winner each day as well. And it's like, all right, and then there's a race to the top of the mountain, but there's other sprint points, and it's like, it's chaos.
it's hard to explain.
Explain Formula One. First guy across the line wins.
That's right. And there's so many races a year, and that's it. No, I think that's exactly right. There's a vocabulary that is, I think, restrictive because it's intimidating. We talk about power profiles, cadence, heart rate zones, power zones. These are all things that if you're trying to bring somebody new into the sport and you go straight to the sort of deeply technical components, it's overwhelming.
Yeah.
And there, I'll come back to the point you made about Peloton. I think they did a really good job of just removing that friction. I have respect for
It's
the
the
brand.
yellow brick road we were talking about for how do you baby step them in here?
I mean, you mentioned it with, you talked about your girlfriend. Why can't I turn the bike over? These are things that are, let's say, in the sort of diehard parlance, they're taboo. But the truth is that's what also restricts people from coming into the sport. So I'm all about destigmatizing that. I think we really need to take that out of the sport and say, you know what, if you want to turn your bike upside down, go for it. Why not?
Yeah.
Where's the rule book that says you can't? There's code that says you can't. But we're keeping people out of the sport, and I think the way we grow it is by inviting people in.
And
So if we can make it easier for people to engage in the product, like one button, click it, I'm riding, and I understand what I got to do. That's that's the holy grail. And then you get those people taking it outdoors, and we're using more computers, more power pedals, more, and we really then help people train with insight and meaning. And when you do that, we unlock value. I mean, I'll give you a good example. Sorry to kind of wax lyrical about this, but this past winter season, I never rode outdoors from the 1st of November until the 31st of March, once. Not once. All indoor training. And it's the first time I've basically abandoned outdoor training completely through the winter. And I frankly enjoyed it. I had a great training season. And the first rides I did, I'd gone to an event in Mallorca, and the first ride I did was 125 kilometers with 6,000 foot of climbing. And that morning, I was thinking to myself, man, I don't know, maybe I've bitten off more than I can chew. And we were riding with Sean Kelly was actually riding with us. So, I mean, there was a little bit of pressure to show up, And I was like, I don't know if this winter training worked out well enough. But we rode. I was absolutely fine, fully prepared for the event. And it was a true revelation for me that indoor training is now at a point where it can absolutely successfully prepare you for outdoor cycling.
I agree with you from a physiological point of view, but I think the part that we can't separate from this is like the person with 50,000 Instagram followers. Like, we're socially connected digitally, but we're isolated and we're lonely. And for me, the antidote to loneliness is community. And I don't know if that extends to virtual community. There's nothing like meeting a friend in a coffee shop before a ride. And I don't know how we bridge that gap in a world where close passes are getting worse, where female participation on group rides doesn't seem to be growing. There's just some endemic problems in... I think it's such an amazing onboarding vehicle you have for expanding our whole ecosystem. But then I wonder how you get them past the first hurdle from riding indoors to going out on their own.
So I couldn't agree more. I think we learned a lot of lessons through living through COVID in the past few years, one of which was the value of social context and social community. There are many studies being done now about the impact it had on the school-going community during COVID and how it's affected their social experience and a skill set that had to be developed later in their life because they missed out on those valuable years, as one example. So I couldn't agree with you more. I think it is complementary as opposed to substitutional, is the way I think about indoor training. And for us, ultimately, one of the key value drivers of engaging in a product that builds a better athlete is the benefit of societal development and engagement. To your point, the sense of community. I love getting out and riding my bike with a group. I love riding my bike with my wife. It's a valuable social experience for me, and that brings a mental health benefit that I don't get through my indoor training.
So how much of a responsibility... Sorry for speaking across a small bit of lag, but how much of a maybe a different way to frame this is why I love entrepreneurs and why I love conversations like this one is you're taking responsibility for solving problems in the world that aren't really your problems to solve. You're doing it for a greater good. A problem needs to be solved, and it's you guys who are sticking your hand up to solve this problem, whether it's making the indoor experience better or better navigation. We have these endemic barriers to more participation on the road. How do you think about your role as a leader in tackling these problems? Are these problems that we need to solve as a community, or are they, like, I'm talking problems like close passes, like, dangerous environments, whether that's in races or out of races? I think even the kit is a problem. When you chat to females, it's difficult to show up in a male-dominated training group if you end the sentence there, that's difficult. Now, if you ask the same girl to show up in a male-dominated training environment wearing clothing that's essentially body paint, that adds an extra layer of, I'm not sure I want to go out with this group. So there is we could brainstorm, there's probably, 5 or 6 other problems that hinder participation. How do you think about your role as a company in addressing those problems?
I think there are a few things that we can do. One, this has traditionally been a male-dominated environment. If you look at various studies around the world, more or less, they mimic the same demographic. 80% of the outdoor cyclists are male, 20% female, more or less. And that's a real shame, because to me, we're missing an opportunity to give the female athlete the experience that is actually an incredibly good experience.
Yeah, maybe the best part.
It's because there are real barriers. And so we owe it to the cycling community to try and participate in breaking down some of those barriers. Can I remove them all? No. Can we be a part of removing some of them? Yes. One is becoming comfortable in a sport that does have a higher friction than, for example, running. And now again, we're into the running brand, which is a valuable opportunity for us to help transition people. But running is something where you put your sneakers on, you choose whatever clothing you want to wear, and you get out and run, and there's very little judgment. Yeah. I've very rarely found the running community to be one that is sort of judgmental about the way you choose to train.
Your socks don't match your runners.
Nobody
cares.
Happen
like,
right? People just get out and run. And so the barriers to entry there are really, really low. And the data shows that in the sort of 20 to 30-year-old community, running is one of the fastest growing sports. And it's easy. It's because it's easy. And they have developed a really strong sense of community through the digital applications. I mean, if you think about products like Runner, they've created community around their applications. That's a huge success with a great product that has brought people into the sport for a sense of community, not just athletic achievement. So I think in cycling, if we can look to destigmatize some of the things you described, like kit, ease of setup is a real problem. Getting a bike set up, it's not like just buying a pair of sneakers.
Yeah.
You go into a running store, somebody helps you fit your feet, and you've got sneakers, and off you go. Whereas a bike is a little different, and you do need to set it up properly, because if you don't, it can create injury. It can be an uncomfortable experience, especially for women who historically haven't had as much help with the sport. To do that, I think we need to attract more females to work in the industry, because one of the things I'm acutely aware of is, in our organization, it's something we're working on, is how do we embrace more female input into our design process, because we haven't done enough of that. And so I said we are athletes who build products for athletes, but we also have a male biased employee base. And that's not to say anything about the team that we have today. We have incredible people. I'd like to add more female voices to that, though, to make sure that we've got to the point of diversity. Like, let's listen to the community, hear what the problems are, and then engineer that into the solutions. Otherwise, we're never going to get it right.
Every rider chases that feeling, the one where the bike just disappears, where the pedals turn easy and the road hums beneath you, and for a few fleeting seconds everything just clicks. No effort, no noise, just flow. That moment isn't luck, it's engineering. The kind that only comes from obsession. For over 20 years, Parley has refined the art of carbon. Every layer placed by hand. Every angle tuned by feel and data until response, balance and speed exist in perfect harmony. You don't notice a Parley because it's flashy. You notice it because it feels right. Because every input, every climb, every corner happens exactly how you imagined it would. Customer production, every frame goes through the same uncompromising process, traceable, tested, and finished by people who still believe craftsmanship matters. Parley doesn't chase trends, they chase that moment every rider lives for, when the bike and the body move as one. Parley cycles, engineered for that feeling that keeps us coming back. Yeah, I think you're totally right on that. Even I've been had my eyes really open in the past 12 months as Sarah, my girlfriend's got more and more into cycling. She started training for Badlands this year, which she just finished. And it was just that training journey for me highlighted that almost like your path that you trod versus the path Ian Boswell trod, two totally different experiences. Maybe we both arrive at the start line of Badlands, but we two totally different experiences getting there. Even the indoor training experience, I would have never thought that you're more prone, more susceptible to greater severity, saddle sores indoors versus outdoors, because that's just not a consideration I've ever had. But the female anatomy just isn't the same as the male anatomy when it comes to sitting stationary for, and the decision to ride indoors for 60 minutes versus 3 hours. It's a different decision-making matrix you go through that we're not privy to. So that just totally opened my eyes to go, whoa, we still do have quite a long way to go.
Absolutely right. So it's a journey. We're not where I'd like to be yet, but we certainly are working to make sure that we engage that community more. For example, the teams that we sponsor in the pelotons, we only work with teams that have got both male and female riders. We also work very closely with the Human Powered Health team, which is a female-only cycling team. These are avenues for us, just as examples, to kind of both highlight the opportunity of the sport and the value it can add to your life, but also learn and get credible feedback into our product development process.
If you're back on the podcast in 12 months, what does a 12-month success look like for you guys?
Well, 12 months, ironically, is actually not a long time when it comes to sort of product development. So we have a product development pipeline that goes out multiple years. And so there are products that we plan to release within the next 12 months, and that's part of that pipeline. So I would expect 12 months from now, you should see a few more products on the market from us. But more than that, I think I'd like to see us making good progress on our software product. So we have an app ecosystem that provides you with an integrated view of what your running experience, what your indoor cycling experience looks like, what your outdoor cycling experience looks like. That is a data set that is really important for our community to understand how you are performing as an athlete. So what's your goal? And again, your goal can be, I've never run before, I've never ridden before, and I want to go and do my first local event. If that's your goal, what do I need to do to train for that goal, and how am I progressing towards that goal? That's an important data point for people to be able to feel good about what they're doing, right? The experience that they're having with your product. So 12 months from now, I'd like to see that advance from where we are today to start to create more of a mission focus. So if I want to say to somebody, we're building the better athlete in all of us, well, you need to know what athlete you are today, and you need to have a goal for what kind of athlete you want to be, and then you need to be able to see how you're tracking. If we can't show that, it's very difficult to measure whether you're actually delivering on your mission or not.
Yeah.
So that I'd like to see some progress on. So hardware, software, products will come in both spaces. And then the third thing I'd say, I'd like to continue to advance the brand equity that we've built in the cycling community. I think I've got the shirt on the Wahooligan brand. I mean, I know it resonates differently with different people, but it does speak a little bit to our grassroots culture. We build products for people that are really passionate about what they do, and I'd like to see us continue to advance that brand equity, because we do the things that the kind of people who have helped us become who we are, love and want to see more of, and we're kind of moving the ball down the field in that direction.
And just to finish up, you had a beautiful moment with two of your ambassadors you mentioned already, with Lachlan Morton and Ian Boswell up in Vermont, I think it was, where instead of racing for the win, they decided to come in together to honour their friends. You tell me a little bit about that and what it meant for you as a company to see that unity?
Well, I thank you for bringing that up. It was a couple of weeks ago, Ian and Lachlan had lost a very good friend of theirs during this race, which Ian supports up in his local community in Vermont. And there was a tough moment for them, and they had set out on the start of this race, during the start of this race. And it so happened organically that they ended up between Lachlan and Ian sort of challenging each other for victory in the race. And it was just one of those organic moments where they made the decision to cross the line together and celebrate the fact that they could look back on a tough life experience with something that demonstrated what sport really does mean. And I think it was, to me, it's a moment we should celebrate because it's more than about winning. It's about the friendships you build. It's about the sense of community you build. And I thought it was something that is two well-respected athletes. I tip my hat to them and say, well done, because you set an example for all the aspirant athletes out there, children and adults. Great. That's how we should behave.
Thanks for sharing that story, and thank you so much for being so generous with your time today, because I know you're a busy man. I really appreciate it.
No, it's a pleasure. Hopefully you want to have me on again in 12 months and
let's do it.
We can talk about what we have achieved and what we're doing for the cycling community and the running community, and making healthier, happier athletes out of the people that we love to engage with. So thank you for having me on.
It's been a pleasure.